You may start. I'm recording.
All right, thank you. Just as a place we start, I'd just like Chris to take a minute to explain the system that we're working with here under Google Plus to allow us to get input from people from afar, so we can increase physician participation in these meetings and hopefully make them more robust. Chris.
How do you sign into that,
I'm going to go to here so I'm live to a camera and to the actual recorded camera. I spent 5 minutes with Jeff Williams this afternoon. I had him up and live on an iPad. We are using Google+. Dr. Bordur, you're also on Google Plus already. Dr. McHugh was. Dr. McHugh, I'm just going to give me a hand sign. Can you hear me okay? Okay. You're pretty muted right now, and it's a matter of feedback that we'll have to work on. And that's the biggest thing that I've been working on. There's a camera in the back of the room that gives us this full view. For the people that are sitting on this side of the room, you are out of the picture. Dr. Daly has his own feed. He's down here at the bottom.
Note to self.
Right over here. Okay.
Note to self.
I have a couple other computers in the room. My computer, as well as the computer back there for speaker purposes. That's who you can see. Everybody who's in the room right now. The ceiling shot is my computer over there. The directive was to actually figure out a way to use video conferencing at a cheap, inexpensive way to do it. Google Plus is free to everybody who wants to use it. It's part of your Gmail account. If you see the U Plus up in the top left, you can upgrade your account, and that's how you're doing it. When you go to a Hangout, which is where we are now, technically by Google's terms, it is a Hangout. All right. This is joining the meeting room. All right. And it does install a program onto your computer so that you can video conference. You will probably need to make sure that your computer has a microphone and a video camera. If not, the two devices that we got here are under $100 for computers that don't have it. Macs all have them integrated so that you can do it pretty quickly. Okay? I can work through, if Mr. Williams, in probably 10 minutes, we did it on your iPad. If you have an iPhone, you can do it there as well. iPad, iPhone. I'm not an Android user, so I'm assuming that there probably is an Android phone-based Google Plus app for this. But I'll be more than willing to work through anybody. Took me 15 minutes to get him, so I can do just about everybody. All right? Hey.
Well, I think I just got insulted.
From 5 to 10 to 15.
That's right. Yeah.
The initial consult was fine. And then when we worked the bugs out, it took a couple of minutes.
I'm going to give you the open meetings law. It does allow for video conferencing. This is New York State open meeting law. General construction law for New York State as well also allows for video conferencing. The thing that they do state is that video conferencing should be part of your posting that says this conference will be video conference and you can view it here. We will not allow for outside places at this time. We can see who's in the meeting. If we decide that we need to make this open to everybody, we can make this a very public place. Additionally, it will take out this video camera. We may still do it as a backup, but the entire thing can be posted to YouTube, including all the people that are down on the side, as well as all their conversations. It does have that potential for a growth thing. For now, we're just going to go with our video camera. My suggestion was that you work on an approval from the members that you have here. This says that in the future we are going to do this, and we're going to allow for video conferencing, just to put it in the record. Mary, you wanted to jump in on this one in some way, shape, or form, because another agency had tried to do this and it was shut down.
Mountain Lakes was using three different sites. They were using their office, Lake Placid, and Plattsburgh just because of the geographical expanse. And they were told they could not do video conferencing for any votes, like CON votes, one in particular was where it came up. They all had to be in person. So I don't know how this is going to play in. I had nothing to do with that. I just heard about it after the fact.
I think the important thing from my perspective on that would be that is a legislative function of the council to do certificates of need. From the Medical Advisory Committee perspective, we already have a policy that allows both teleconference and video conference input from our physicians. We have great respect at this group. The amount of volunteer physician time that we already use. My goal is always to increase the amount of physician participation rather than decrease it at any time. And frankly, I would like to make the motion from the chair that we endorse this method of video conferencing, and we stand by Remo as they work through the bugs on this and keep an eye out for other products that may do it better if such products develop. Because frankly, I want every physician who's a medical director of an agency or has buy-in to this to be a part of the process as we continue to advance what we do at the region. And frankly, this is going to be a huge help for things like collaborative protocol discussion as well. We can't get physicians together. It's too much time, it's too much money, it's a much better use of time. I would just ask that if anybody has a beer in their hand, they make sure to move it off the camera. I think that's going to be important.
Put it in a mug like Rob did.
But no, seriously, I would like to make a motion for the chair to endorse this type of technology for participation of the physicians. With a second from Don. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have a unanimous vote of a quorum of the Remac to endorse this technology. So, fantastic. If we have any questions of statute that we need to discuss, we should talk about whether or not this is appropriate or would be out of compliance with state regs. Rich, can you keep an eye on that for us?
Absolutely. Is it publicly accessible or not?
It can be.
It should be in order to meet the open meeting law requirement.
Well, if it's our only. If we also release that videotape, that's still how we're already in compliance,
then.
right?
Correct. It's supposed to be live.
Okay.
Okay.
We do have the ability to make this live in public. The one thing that we caution is that there could be the ability of anybody, Joe Schmo off the street, to come into this conversation, and not for the purpose of being a part of this meeting, but as it being a disruption to the meeting.
Understood, sure.
So it will be a growing pain for us. At least we've got an initial technology that we can start with. We can grow from here.
Can we mute participants if we find that they are disruptive?
Yes, and we can
Like,
actually block them
Do you
out.
have Dr. McHugh now to make sure that he is not disruptive?
Dr. Just so that you know, myself is muted. Dr. McHugh can mute himself and unmute himself at any time so that we don't hear him drinking coffee.
Coffee.
Yes. Air quotes on that coffee. All right. So thank you, everybody, for being here. My apologies for our late start. Excused today, Dr. Mao and other correspondents. We have a letter from the DOH approving Skidmore to operate as a BLSFR agency. Their agency code will be 1047. Mary, did you welcome them into the region to do their inspection and all that good stuff?
BLSFR, there is no inspection.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'd forgotten about that. Okay, thank you. Tim.
Doc Ushkow, late caller, he's ill.
Ushkow is ill, and Dr. Funk also is unable to make it because of childcare. Thank you. All right, committee reports, starting with the academic committee from Dr. Doynow.
Well, we have a few things to discuss, unfortunately. The first that we brought up at the committee, and it was suggested we bring it up here, see what the docs want to do, is the use of lidocaine for MFI. The way the protocol is listed now, it talks about using it for increased intracranial pressure along with fentanyl. It does specifically say where that increased intracranial pressure is coming from. Just a little previous information as to where the data came from. If anybody wants to see the articles, I pulled the ones I could find. The original article, which I could not find, actually dates back to, I think, the late 60s, early 70s, where there were 8 patients in the ICU who had bolts in their head, and basically they suctioned them and found that they had decreased intracranial pressure given lidocaine prior to the suctioning. The most recent one, which is probably the largest study I've seen anywhere, it was 20 patients also with bolts, because not too many people are willing to volunteer to have bolts in their head to do this. And most people don't have that done previously prior to emergent intubation. Who had brain tumors, again, who they essentially measured their cranial pressure with lidocaine. So the question comes down to what we should do with this. It certainly appears to be useful, at least from a data standpoint, for folks who were worried about increased intracranial pressure for whatever reason, particularly trauma. However, what seems to have occurred in the area now, talking to a bunch of providers, is it's being given for people who have strokes before we end up intubating them. The thought being that they're going to have increased intracranial pressure from their stroke, which I don't know anywhere where that data would come from. If you're having an acute stroke, you don't have cerebral edema immediately. you have a bleed, you have a mass effect, and lidocaine is not going to do anything for that. And it does decrease your mean arterial pressure, which decreases your brain perfusion, which is something we really don't want to be doing. So it was suggested we bring it up to the docs here to see what people want to do. And do we want to send out a letter that says essentially lidocaine should be used only in MFI for someone who has significant head trauma and we're worried about immediate increase in cranial pressure. There is no data that I could find that shows any outcome, whether you use it or you don't use it. I personally know of a case that had a complication from lidocaine. It looked like it was idioventricular rhythm that was pushed. And certainly not faulting the medic, because essentially it was a critical situation where they needed to intubate the patient. Had a rhythm, they looked at it, really didn't think much of it, pushed the lidocaine patient. And ended up going asystolic for a short period of time, but came back. So there are potential problems with it. In any case, we'll put it out there and see what we find.
One other potential problem Don didn't mention is that it also lowers the seizure threshold. And patients that are having a CNS event have a lower seizure threshold to begin with and are at risk for seizures. So that's another issue. I'm not speaking pro or con on it. I don't know that I have a strong feeling that it should or shouldn't be used in these situations. We use it in the ED when we can identify a situation where there's increased intracranial pressure and we're rapidly sequence intubating a patient. So I don't know. But that is another drawback to the drug. Using it out in the field, you could put a patient into status or something on top of having an airway problem.
Interesting. Dr. Broder, anything to add from a pharmacy perspective?
I did share some articles with you. It's difficult. I mean, how many, we're talking about patients that receive MFI in the region. If I think I remember the numbers from the last meeting, we're talking about a relatively small subset of individuals, probably 100 patients or so a year, if that.
Probably less.
I mean, I think that the argument has been outlined very nicely, the fact that a couple different things. First of all, we don't have any outcomes to show that this is a beneficial therapy. We do know there is potential harm, and we have seen, sounds like a case in the region where there's some potential harm. It seems to make most sense to limit its use to folks that have had traumatic brain injury as opposed to stroke or something like that. There was a nice quick read on the Annals of Emergency Medicine, which I shared with Mike, and I don't know if I think it got bounced back to you. I don't know if it made it.
2007, right?
Yeah, the 2007 article. And basically, it's a point-counterpoint argument, and both the authors do a very nice job of really, either being proponents for lidocaine for rapid sequence intubation or opponents of it. And reading the article, it really didn't help me make up my mind. Unfortunately, no benefit, but it is standard of practice. And the critics often cite hypotension with lidocaine utilization. And there was another article that was published more recently, also in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine. And this was published last January. And this actually looked at changes in mean arterial pressure after lidocaine administration for folks with brain injury, and it didn't show a significant difference. So I found that interesting. So I think it would make a lot of sense to limit it to the population that's been studied, and that folks with traumatic brain injury.
Okay. Other thoughts? Okay.
I'm supportive of that too.
Yeah.
In which case, why don't we craft an advisory that makes sure that we're not changing the protocol. We're just a clarification and an advisory regarding that protocol to act that way moving forward. Increased ICP, secondary traumatic brain injury, which will make a lot more sense and should provide some clarification and assistance to people as they practice, rather than making a change to a protocol, which could be confusing at this point.
We need a vote on that, or
Makes sense. All right. Well, we've just gotten a head nod vote from everybody in the room. Why don't we do it again as a formal vote? All in favor of an advisory?
Aye.
Aye. And for the record, Dr. McHugh's hand is
Yeah,
up.
we saw him.
Oh, that's true. You see Dr. McHugh's hand there, too. Sitting on my left shoulder. All right.
All right,
Next, sir.
The only other issue to bring up, do you want to bring up the Patel issue? Or
What?
the Patel?
Dr. McHugh, are you ready to discuss patellas?
Hang on a second. Go for it, doctor.
Okay, so I was asked to draw up a protocol for patella reductions. Looking at what's out there, there's really not much as far as pre-hospital literature. I checked out the ASAP EMS list and pretty much got in thirds. You're crazy, in thirds of fancy ways of having this do it spontaneously, and then a third of we've been doing it for years and it works great, never had a problem. So pretty much the straightforward protocol. If it's obviously lateral or medial, reduce it with extension and splint it.
Gotcha.
Hang on, we can't hear you.
What?
We can't hear you right
Oh,
now.
he can't hear me.
Nope.
And now you guys can
Can you hear me?
hear now.
Uh-oh. Now we're in that Yankee Stadium effect again.
Sounds right, Mike. Sounds right.
So, Rob, we discussed this a little bit.
Go ahead.
And Mary chimed in from the state. She had discussed this with Andy Johnson, who is the Director of Education. Mary, do you want to just flesh out what your comment was?
Basically,
Or Andy's not.
the comment was made that it is not included in any scope of practice, either current or in the recently adopted or soon to be adopted paramedic level national standards, as far as the scope of practice for any EMS provider.
So the problem is, if it's not included, that means it's excluded.
Correct. By virtue, yes.
By what?
By virtue, yes. If it's not included, it's excluded. So therefore, do you want to put your providers at risk for operating outside their scope of practice?
That would be a very, very pointed question from the state, wouldn't it? Dr. McHugh, we seem to have gotten a resounding no from the state.
That's what it sounds like.
I don't think we stop here, but I think we do more investigating into where we should move it forward. And where, if you can, share with us it's being used now and done now, so we can continue to follow what truly exists as an operational scope, even if it is outside what is currently the documented scope. One of the things Scott had talked about during the academic committee was that he was not doing C-sections in the field because they were also outside the scope of practice. We all thanked him for that. Frankly, I believe he's right. They should be outside the scope of practice. This, however, where we're talking about the potential to reduce harm rather than cause potential harm, we should continue to explore and work with the state to see how we can add this in.
Me too.
Any other thoughts from the room?
Are there any other scopes of practice in other states that include this?
Great question.
That might be some information we want to have before moving forward.
Rob, where is it being done?
Several places out west. Off the top of my head, I don't know if there's anybody out east. Basically, I saw Montana, Arizona had a couple places, New Mexico.
Montana, Arizona, New Mexico?
Yeah, more remote places.
So it's flatter, drier places.
In the Northeast, Maine is the last states have their wilderness protocols is included in that. So if you're wilderness trained, you can either get command, or if you're 2 hours away, it applies and you can reduce. And that includes shoulders and things like that.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, I know, but I mean,
Any other thoughts or comments for Dr. McHugh? No. Thoughts on reduction of the patella? My position on this is it would be a significant boon to our patients if we could teach people how to do it, because it hurts like hell. A good paramedic's going to give them a lot of medicine. As soon as we reduce it, they stop breathing. The potential for patient harm in these is real once a good pre-hospital provider starts taking care of them, because they're going to take care of their pain, and these things hurt like hell. Sam, thoughts?
You look at me.
I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I also don't think it's such a life and limb threatening situation that we have to do this. You know, I mean, if someone's delayed 10, 15 minutes and getting reduced, I don't think that it's going to be a real life-threatening issue, especially if the patient's been splinted and appropriately, you know, one dose of pain meds out in the field. I don't think any of us would be ordering multiple pain meds for this kind of situation, because as soon as they roll in the ED, we're going to reduce them right away. You know, we're going to reduce them without an x-ray if it's an obvious patellar dislocation. I don't feel strongly about it, to be honest with you.
Okay. That's good. Anybody else, you guys?
I think it's fine to do. It's an easy reduction. It's extremely quick, and we can look at it from a pain control standpoint. We're making our patients that much more comfortable, that much quicker without any medication side effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look at it as pure patient safety.
But I think your main issue is how you actually get this test. Using controlling agents, just can't keep it to do it. So, I don't know, maybe if we can get some information about where else it's done, present it to Andy, figure out how we're going to do it. And as I said, our fallback is always to have you do a pilot.
One of the things we talked about at academic was this would be something that would be extremely hard to gather data on.
There are also not a ton of these cases.
Exactly.
So, I mean, to train, you know, you get into the issue of training a lot of people to do a procedure that they may not do for years.
I think there's some truth to that, Sam. And you know, it becomes a signal to noise ratio for the providers if we teach them too many things. But in this case, because the potential to hurt is so small, and the amount of time it takes to train somebody to do this is also small, it didn't seem to be something out of the scope or out of the realm of reasonable. But why don't we continue to explore it and see if, Rob, if you can keep on working on this, we'll give you some guidance and directions to go. All right? Cool. Thank you.
That's the end of the academic.
The end of the academic report. Excellent. Thank you. REMSCO. Who would like to give a REMSCO report?
Can I try to think back? Other than CON action, the approval of Town and Village of Corinth for their rollover from a muni to a permanent operating certificate, that went through. Another pending CON action with expansion or proposed expansion of Hoosick Valley Rescue Squad in Rensselaer County. That has been tabled for various reasons. Waiting on fitness and competency reviews and some other data from the state on that.
Election of officers, everybody's
Said the annual election took place. The officer slate has remained the same as last year. And anything else?
most things.
Great. Nothing new from the CMAC or SEMSCO. Some basic information from the HOC is highlighted here. The basic disaster life support and advanced life support that are being done are actually really good courses, so if you haven't taken them, you might want to consider that. I don't have it on the minutes, but Dr. McHugh, would you like to give an update on QI, or Dean, would you? Oh, stand by, Rob. Go for it, Rob.
Okay. We looked at, a couple months ago, we looked at cortisone usage. Since we've been stocking free and have to keep replacing it, we went back further, and there's only been 2 or 3 times we used 2 doses, so we're back to free. We're also, I haven't gotten to look at the data yet, but looking basically at all pressor usage, we're looking at dopamine not being rough.
Say that again, I'm sorry, it was pressor use?
Pressor usage, because basically switch orders is see alternatives.
Excellent. Interesting information come up or no? Dean, do we have a formal report on that beyond it? Or
Sorry, I missed the last thing you said.
Rob was talking about pressor use. I was wondering whether or not.
Right, we just pulled up 6 more months worth of data, and I think you got it by email a little while ago, Robbie.
He hasn't looked at it yet.
Okay,
Can you
so-
highlight it?
I haven't looked at it yet either. I just got
Oh.
it by email.
Right.
So I haven't been able to really decipher what it says yet.
Okay. So hopefully more of an update as we go. You want to shoot just an update across to us?
Sure.
All right, when you've got it, so we know a little bit more about that and how much is out there. All right. Agency upgrades we've already discussed. Skidmore is now BLSFR. No public access defibrillation. We've talked about lidocaine and the vital signs safety survey. Tim, do you want to present that at all?
Well, Doc, I threw that on there because you requested me to put it on, you put it on there. I didn't know if you had an update or a report on that or not.
Did I send it around to you or not? Did you print it? Hey, Dean, turn around and tell him yes, he did.
Tim, you did. Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
So the safety survey from 2012 is something we should send around to everybody here. The interesting thing of this is the number of patients that I foresee that have not received training on moving patients and lifting patients. This was a survey of 354 participants at Vital Signs last year. Of them, 52% were EMTs. Of them, they were distributed pretty well between less than 5 years, 5 to 10, 11 to 20, or greater than 20 years in EMS. And it was fascinating to see that of them, a third had received no training in stretcher operations, and a third had gotten no training on lifting and moving patients, which is kind of scary since that's how a huge number of our providers get hurt. As you look at this, also take a look at some of the other things that have occurred. They didn't knock out as much of the comparisons as I would have expected from this. For example, they looked to see what the survey response was to whether or not they wear high visibility vests in operations. And it looks like it's about a third of people don't. Both now and in 2011, they said the same thing. Interestingly, a significant number of patients, about a third again, say that they respond to life-threatening calls without lights and sirens. So that means 2/3 of patients, of participants, are using lights and sirens responding to low priority calls. So some scary and odd information, which should get around to all of you. And it's interesting. Time per week exercising strenuously greater than 20 minutes. 83 people don't exercise, and 31 exercise 5 times per week. Sorry. So we'll send that out. Vital Signs Patellas. You should all have in front of you an intranasal medication survey sheet. The intranasal survey was something that started with the Schenectady and Albany Fire quality assurance committees being interested in whether or not their providers had a belief in the efficacy of intranasal medications. The idea behind this would be to send it out to all of the participating regional paramedics and CCTs that are in the remoals.com system, so that we can then find out through an anonymous survey how many people we should probably get more training for, whether we should continue to train on intranasal meds and intranasal techniques. One question that we are going to add to this will be a list of all of the medications in the region, so we can ask them, before they even get into the rest of the survey, which of the following medications may be given intranasally, because that actually may generate fascinating results in itself. All right. This has gone through the IRB at Albany Med, and one of my residents has actually jumped on this as a project. So if anybody, as you look at this, sees anything that you think would be an interesting addition to it, please let me know. We'll do the update and then get this out hopefully within the next month.
I could also add right to that formulary question, have you used any of these medications in the last 6 months or the last year?
Mm-hmm.
Just have you used them in general?
Oh, that's true.
So we know if we have useless medications on formulary.
We have useless medications on the formulary.
But this would be a good way to quantify it.
Interesting. I wonder if that's actually a question for the next survey that I want to show you rather than this one.
Useless medication?
Yes, the useless medication survey. So while we're on that, let me add one thing to new business before we do the pediatric medication sheets that you all got by email. And that's a survey that's also in front of you entitled Collaborative Protocols Update 2014. This is a survey that's going to go out to all of the agencies for use by any of their providers, and will be linked at Mary's suggestion, which is an awesome one, on the website as well, so that people can give us protocol suggestions. They'll all be contained in one place. It won't be random scraps of paper crammed in an envelope. So this way we'll be able to address all potential protocol updates at the same time, hopefully with the same level of evidence. We've asked people to include as much evidence as they have for the protocol change. And maybe one of the questions to ask on here is, are there any medications that we currently have in our drug box that there isn't much reason to have there? And are there any other drugs that you feel should be added to the drug box, and why? So I think that's a really good suggestion. Any other thoughts about that? So what I'm actually doing is, anytime somebody sends me a protocol change request at this point, I'm asking them to complete something like this, and we'll move on from there. Tim will be collecting all of these, and that way we'll be able to use it for the next protocol update. Next, pediatric medication sheets. Mike, do you want to introduce the work that you did? Because you did a ton of work on those.
I honestly haven't done too much with them. I just made some mock-ups. I didn't realize I would be speaking on it today. I do have a few copies of a couple of the mock-ups. Can you maybe give the background to this?
Sure. We do, as you know, an awful lot of pre-hospital medical direction at the Med. And one of the things that's extremely hard in an acute situation is giving people appropriate doses and appropriate volumes of medications. The Broslow tape is designed to assist with that, and the goal here was to create spreadsheets that would then allow the physicians to be able to do medical direction for pediatric cases as efficiently and easily as possible. We started a mock-up of it with a medical student, creating a general mock-up. I passed it on to Mike to make sure that everything we were doing was pharmacologically correct, and he actually found some other examples and went from there.
Right, so I have I only have a couple copies here, so maybe the physicians in the room, because this is.
I think the physicians already have it.
Okay.
Got it online.
Okay, so if anyone wants to see it, I have a couple copies here, so I don't have enough for everyone, I'm sorry.
We can share one.
But there's a couple of issues when it comes to something like this. One is usability for the end user. We're talking about, in some of these cases, very, very small doses.
You'll see it.
So there's 3 mock-ups here, and this is work that's been done, as Mike was saying, by a medical student. And ultimately, it would be colored with the Broslow tape. So there's version A, there's version B, and there's version C. Now, version C actually comes out of the University of Cincinnati, their EMS office. I guess I'll give my disclosure. I like this version the best. I find this, so basically for each weight of the patient, there would be a separate page. The reason I think this is the best from a medication safety standpoint is it gives the dose in 2 ways. It gives the dose in mLs and also gives the dose in milligrams. And then it also gives you the dose range. So in my mind, this makes it really the safest thing to do if you have some questions in terms of what should be done. The utility or advantages of version A and B is they're relatively easy to update. So if we make a protocol change. However, I think it does get a little bit more busy, and there's the potential with those versions potentially to come up with doses that may be very difficult for providers to measure in the field and make things not as practical as, say, version C. So I wanted to bring it to this body before I proceeded any farther with the work here to see what the thoughts of everyone were in terms of what they liked that.
I like version B the best because it's not quite so difficult. I don't know if you could use the dosage and put the dosage in 2 forms. There's enough space there to put down milligrams and or cc's like you have here, or milliliters. Only because I'm having trouble kind of reading this other. And generally, it's going to be something that you want to look at quickly. Absolutely. Weight 6, move down to your drug, and you're done, rather than kind of be quick. So okay. That would be my plan.
The individual pages would have to be in a notebook that they keep in the ambulance, as opposed to this could be drunk and laminated.
This is for the medical control physician rather than for the providers themselves. The provider should be working from their Broslow tape. And the goal is that they would call in, tell us what the color of the patient is on the Broslow tape, what the estimated weight of the patient is. The physician doing medical direction would then be able to consult from this to help them out. It's interesting, I talked to a number of different physicians at the Med, and they literally went a third A, a third B, and a third C.
That was helpful.
Well, I think it kind of was, because C is something that would make a great tool. And I think having C laminated in the back of our medical control book so it's there and can be referenced will be very helpful. And frankly, the ones who picked A or B will never remember which one they picked anyway, so we could just print one of the other. So I think
it sounds like maybe B with a modification to provide the medication safety, having the dose both in milligrams and also in the volume would make sense, and then potentially with the sort of the appendix, which is version C.
Yeah, that sounds very.
Now, I'm looking, I practice adult and geriatric pharmacotherapy, so if there's anyone here that has a keen interest in pediatrics, the only pediatrics I really know is my kids, so if anyone wants to double check, I can have our pediatric specialists on our Vermont campus double check all the work. I mean, it's pretty straightforward math, but if everyone wants to give it a good critical look from a therapeutic standpoint, I would appreciate that.
Only thing to add, and not saying one's better than the other, there's an iPhone app that I use called PStat. That basically you can put in the age, you can put the weight, you can put in the height, you can put basically everything. And then once you do that, and you have kilos or pounds, and then you pull up anything you want. I mean, it really has all the drug calculations. Not that it's better than anything else. I think it was like $24, but there are a bunch of iPhone apps. It's funny because, as Corey mentioned, most likely the provider is going to pull out their phone and be looking at the protocols. So.
Well, at the very least, they'll be pulling out the phone to call.
Or be pulling out the phone to call and they can look at the same time. Just one thing to.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think
Mike.
when it comes to critical medications like this and
Palm P,
concentrations that we may not be used to
Phosphate
giving every
color-coded.
day, the application, the more sources of information we have, and the more sources of information that confirm the correct dose, the better.
You're talking about it. Usually because it's a critical situation where you're
Right.
trying to move quickly.
And I'd like to make sure that whatever we have is correlated to the protocols that we're having people follow, to make sure that we don't have any discrepancies. Whereas these will be written directly to our protocols, so that then they'll be available as a resource to the person on the other end of the phone. Because again, we don't want a medical control physician looking down seizure management on a Broslo tape that says Ativan. Doesn't help us to give dosing for Ativan to a paramedic that carries the Ativan.
So I'll try to work on that and get that back to the MAC within the next meeting or two.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate that. All right. Old business. Dr. Bernav was nice enough to take a look at the guidelines for agency upgrades.
No, I don't have that second name. Does anybody remember the second doctor
Yeah, it
chart?
was me.
Was it done?
Yeah, it was me. I looked at it. It looked okay to me. I mean, I didn't see anything that needed to be majorly changed, but.
So it sounds like there were only a couple of modifications that we should make to the current existing ALS upgrade procedures. One being that intermediate life support not be required 24/7 for an agency that's interested in going intermediate, which
Change
is
the verbiage.
what?
Change the verbiage from intermediate to advanced EMT.
Oh, that's
That's
true.
the new-
When is advanced EMT going to be official in New York?
This May?
May.
May,
May.
May 13th.
And is on the middle of May, is every intermediate automatically going to be grandfathered in as an advanced? How's that going to work, Mary?
Next time they re-up their card, as long as it's done by 15, by June of 15 is when the end implementation date is. 15?
The
14, June 14.
June
June of
14.
14.
June 14th.
June of 14, sorry, I misspoke. They will have to either re-enroll in an original AEMT class, because there is no refresher, this is a brand new course, or opt to either go up to critical care or down to a basic level.
Or paramedic.
Well, yeah, they can jump fully in it.
This state's actually got a really nice resource as far as all the transition stuff on their website. It's got everything laid out with dates and time frames, and it's pretty straightforward to take a look at.
Okay. So we should probably make it advanced EMT / intermediate for now, as we will have agencies that are practicing at our current intermediate level for some time until 2015
14.
following.
So
Oh, I
basically,
thought
a
you said
year
15.
from
I'm sorry.
a year from this June,
Right.
you will have to reevaluate the protocols
Right.
prior to a year from June, because
Right.
as of then,
Right.
there will be no more intermediates. It'll all be advanced.
So,
Okay.
in essence, if we were to think about it as level 1, 2, AMT used to be 3, and then paramedic used to be level 4.
Well, no, it'll be critical care. You still got critical care. We did not
Right.
remove that from the scope.
AEMTs are 2s.
So
Right,
AEMT
so
would be
we're
two.
getting rid of 2, basically.
No, we're changing.
Just
two.
changing the name
Okay, you're saying.
and a little
And
bit
adding
of
more
scope.
stuff.
And the scope, yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Dr. Daly, just so you know, you lost Dr. McHugh for a minute.
I found him. He's over here.
I don't have any audio right now.
No, they
He
have
doesn't?
to roll in the original.
Oh.
So
I'm sorry, Dr. McHugh, you have no idea.
Mike, I'm not sure I agree with that, making it 24/7. I think that's a slippery slope to go down. If you want to have advanced care, then you need to provide 24/7, or you're just a BLS squad, and you can assist when the medical arrives.
That actually was something that we had done as precedent for, initially for Hoosick Valley, Del Mar, Caro, but basically we've had multiple different agencies that are operating at the intermediate level because that was just the best they could do, and is a precedent that we've allowed. What we have not allowed as precedent has ever been someone to operate at the paramedic level, because every agency in the region is required to have a relationship with an ALS agency who will respond on high priority calls. So whether you're an intermediate or you're a basic agency on a high priority call, you should still be getting the paramedic agency coming to help you out. So I think that was the way we developed that. That was, help me, Rich, that may have been in your tenure. I think that was in your tenure. Yeah. So that's been basically how we've been operating for a while, which is why I suggested that change.
That's fine.
So, any disagreement on that?
Dr. Jella, just a question.
Sir.
Mary, I'm trying to pull it up now, but I'm having trouble with the internet. But when are AEMTs able to provide care? Like, when can they start using it if they get a course finished? Now, right?
If their protocols are written to allow that, yes.
Right, that's my question. Right now, I was just going to add this on. We don't have.
Protocols.
Okay, so we don't have AEMT protocols in this region. So even if somebody took an AEMT
They're
course,
still left at the intermediate protocol, the way it stands now.
intermediate or BLS?
Depends what their agency is.
Okay. So you're saying if they're
You
certified
could be a
as
medic riding on a
Yeah.
BLS agency and you're still just a basic.
I understand. What you're saying is if you have the AEMT, that will still give you credentials to ride as an intermediate.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we didn't take anything away, they
Right.
added to it.
Right. Because otherwise we don't have protocols that they couldn't ride in our region.
Right.
So probably start looking at that.
And we will not have anything until sometime in 14, when we will update the protocols to say basic, advanced, CCT, paramedic. Right?
Yes.
Okay. 2014, right?
June 2014.
June 2014.
So the
Okay.
earlier half.
All right. And the only other thing on this agency upgrade sheet that we had is that it said that an ALS coordinator for an intermediate agency had to be a credentialed EMT intermediate.
Totally agree.
But if it's all right with you, I was going to change the policy to say or above. So if a paramedic wants to serve as a ALS coordinator for an intermediate agency, that should be fine. And again, that's something we have precedent for. All in favor of those changes?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. And you saw no changes on the paramedic? No changes on paramedic? You are. Beautiful. Thank you. And Tim, staff was looking at Remac meeting times. Were you going to use a computer algorithm to do that, or how did you want to do that? You put it on the agenda.
Again, I thought that was a request from you. There was discussion at either the last meeting or the meeting previous to that about making the time a little bit better to allow for better participation. I know Doc Funk has had persistent conflict. Dr. Vogel has persistent conflict, and maybe one or two other doctors. So that came up as an item of discussion. That's where it was left though.
Okay. I had thought that we had asked staff here to poll the physician membership of the MAC using some type of a scheduling algorithm online in order to figure that out.
We'll do it tomorrow morning.
Rather
Okay.
than, absolutely,
All right.
absolutely. I wouldn't look to be making any changes in that until September, because we already, I'm sure, are looking all the way through spring anyway. But our goal is, as we said with the video conferencing, as much participation as possible. So if it's time to make a change, let's make a change. Okay. Any other new business from anybody?
There's one thing from the QI committee we had discussed. There's inaccuracies and discrepancies between agency to agency regarding what constitutes a provider getting a signal number. I know we've discussed this multiple times, but there's been no official direction from the region regarding this. So we have sometimes in one agency where a medic will start a line and not get a signal number because there was no meds pushed. In other agencies, if they do a glucose, they are getting a signal number. So those are two far ends of the spectrum. I think we need to come up with an approved or a directive of this is when you get a signal number, and this is when you don't. And this is also feeding into our inaccuracies in the Remo ALS system.
We did this
So
already.
as we discussed it a little bit in the QI meeting, we had amongst ourselves decided that if there's any invasive procedure, so if there's an IV or a well started, that constitutes a signal. If there's any medications given, that would also. And if there's a 12 lead done, that would also constitute a signal. Now, a blood glucose can be done by an EMT, so we would exclude that. But we bring it to the MAC
Dr.
to
Dale.
I'm not happy with the
make a
12.
final determination
Dr.
because
Dale.
it is definitely a problem.
I wasn't taking the minutes at the time, but I know we discussed this at length, and that the MAC's decision at the time was that any ALS skills that were not done by BLS, so even a 4 lead, was to be determined use of ALS procedures under our protocols in the region. There were a large group of people in the room that disagreed with the interpretation, myself included. But what
nobody that has to pay for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's some definite financial ramifications.
there certainly
to this definition.
is. But what was pushed back out was that essentially anything over the basic life support, so anything as far as EKG, anything that you needed ALS training for was a signal.
I'm not sure I remember the conversation exactly the way you do, but I do know that there's a significant amount of history of discussions that have led to this. So what I would ask is, Tim, if you can direct staff to go back, let's find what was done. Frankly, I believe this policy has been written down at least once before. Let's find it. And then we can make it an agenda item for next month to review what the policy has been in the past, what has been voted on here before, and whether or not that's something that we need to establish more clearly.
If you do that for next meeting, you might want to just distribute it before we get here so that.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Make modifications as necessary and get it done.
That's a great idea. Because that way we'll be able to look at it and just be done with it. Absolutely.
Was whatever policy that existed not dug up as part of the QI meeting that you guys did?
It was a discussion. I don't recall policy ever being established.
Okay.
It's there, I remember voting on this.
I know we've talked about it ad
basically
nauseum.
It was an advisory, I think, even.
No, it was IV, START, or MET. It had nothing to do with
No, we can't use this.
Yeah. Because it'll have a significant budgetary impact on agencies like ourselves and
Right.
many of the cities.
Right.
Is that if we're going to make a change to include 12 leads or EKGs, that I'm going to have to budget for that. And
Right.
you can't implement that until the following budget year.
Right.
It's a significant number of patients that
Advisories.
come in as a chest pain, you get there, you pop the monitor on, and then realize it's clearly not a
Hours
cardiac
before
case, you
that.
pop the monitor off and away they go. Is that a signal? I mean,
Well,
is that
let's
accessible?
Right.
let's see what the discussion was in the past. Let's make sure that we're remaining consistent to our history.
So it's like $4,000 bill, we're making $8,000 bill.
What?
Historically, Dean is correct, speaking is probably one of the older medics in the room.
I apologize, just because there's enough talking. He won't, Dr. McHugh won't be able to understand us.
Hey, folks.
Hey, Ken.
Sidebar in the corner, guys. We've got the black dot in the ceiling that we have to speak towards, so we can make sure that Dr. McHugh can hear us.
Just trying to understand the budgetary impact that they're referring to.
Yeah. Important. Important. Rich, you had some historical perspective.
Speaking as one of the, probably one of the older paramedics in the room, the point of demarcation was always an invasive procedure. Electrocardiogram did not count, did not require a signal 600 be established, and a run number be obtained. And Peter's right, if you change it to 12 leads and 4 leads, it's a huge economic impact on the agency, unless you want to lower the cost per signal.
Determine if we even need that.
Right.
Gotcha. Well, let's pull the history and then bring that information to everybody so we make sure we're all talking about the right stuff. Okay. Good. Thank you. Dean, thanks for bringing that up. Anything else from the floor? Excellent. Motion to adjourn, please. All in favor? Dr. McHugh is even in favor. Thank you, Dr. McHugh.